I feel like I'm going to let out a massive burp. Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news. And Erik ten Hag has a new transfer priority as he looks to snub the requirement of buying a striker in January to move for another more important position. Lots to get into in the show tonight. I want to do loan watch as well. I think loan watch is really important because you might be aware of what Mejbri's doing at Birmingham, but are you aware about what 4 or 5 other players are doing as well, and whether some of those players may well be coming back to Manchester United that we don't want back in the summer? So we'll be talking about that. There's also a bit of update on the striker situations as well. We've had a couple of players speaking publicly who could be coming to Manchester United, and a couple of updates from European outlets talking about players as well. So lots to get into on the show. We will be talking about this new transfer priority as well. And I sort of want to pose the question to you, good people. Should we buy a striker in January, or should we spend more on a striker in the summer? Because we won't be able to do both. If we buy Cody Gakpo in January for 35 million, we won't then go and spend 100 million on Osman in the summer. So do you wait or do you go early? We'll talk about that. But before we do that, Leo says the loans are doing well. Some of them are. Before we get into that, look what I'm wearing. It's getting a little bit wintry. Autumn's coming, and you could be looking like me in some Boohoo Man active wear, whether you're out running, playing a bit of five-a-side, or just chilling in a hoodie from Boohoo Man Active, watching the Great British Bake Off. You can get yourself a fantastic deal through the United Stand, as Boohoo Man Active are sponsoring the show. But because Boohoo Man are sponsoring the show, it means it's time for some Manchester United trivia, because that's what Boohoo Man actively like to do with you. Not only are they going to give you a deal, they're also going to interact with you as Manchester United fans. Or maybe you're just not United fans watching, but here we go. So guess who am I? I was born on the 2nd of April 1966 in London, England. I made my United debut in June 1997 after joining the club for £3.5 million from Tottenham Hotspur. I didn't realise he joined in 97, actually. I would have guessed later than that. I played 104 games for Manchester United, scoring 31 goals. That doesn't mean he's Irish, by the way. And during my United career, I won 3 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup and 1 Champions League. Not a bad haul. Not a bad haul at all. I was PFA Player of the Year in the 2000-2001 season. Forgot he won that. Who am I? Can you guess in the chat? Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you? It's not Nanny. It's not Nanny. Adam Edwards has got it. It's Teddy Sheringham. It's Teddy Sheringham. It's Teddy Sheringham. Of course it's Teddy Sheringham. Well done to everyone who got that. As always, Boohoo Man have given United Stand a discount for our viewers on this video. So by scanning the QR code next to me or clicking the link in the description and using the code Goldbridge, you can get 40% off at Boohoo Man. You can get one of these or whatever else they've got. Loads of stuff, 40% off. Christmas is coming. Get it for your mum, your dad, your lad, your daughter, your mates, whatever. Thanks so much to Boohoo Man for supporting today's show, and now on with the stream. And I must just say, I know I keep saying this, but I wear this a lot. I think we're at that time of year now where it's just snug. It's just nice and snug and cozy, and yeah. Occurred to me today how much effort. Oh, sorry. Grumpy says it occurred to me today how much effort it must take to deliver all this content every day. Thanks, Mark and the team. It does take a lot of effort, but you know what? We wouldn't do it if we didn't get something back. So I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the interactivity. I mean, I never understood why when we started people were doing pre-recorded content. I never understood it. I hate I know we do some pre-record sometimes out of necessity, but you can't beat the fact that you're live with people live watching. Very good. I love it. I love it. Anyway, look, let's start off with this story. So this is coming from Plettigol, who is a German journalist. You may remember him from the summer. Pretty good on transfer stuff. So he's been speaking, I don't know where it was from, presumably in Germany, and it might have been Sky Germany, but basically he's saying that Manchester United's priority in the January transfer window, and therefore Erik ten Hag's, is a right back. A striker still remains a requirement, but the priority is right back. And as for a goalkeeper, that really depends on what happens with David De Gea. So I think there's a couple of things to talk about here, because for one, I think that this journalist is reasonably good. I quite like him, and I think he's probably not wrong. I don't really get a lot of transfer stuff out of the summer or January because I just can't be bothered to go and get it really. So I can't really add if it's true or not. But I think it logically makes a lot of sense. we do need a right back, and I think it's logical that Wan-Bissaka will go. So Wan-Bissaka goes, a right back comes in. But many people will quite rightly be saying we need a striker, Mark. We need a striker, Mark. We need a striker. And I think the context of this for me is that sometimes the evidence is there, even if you want to ignore it. Now, Manchester United have publicly and privately put it out there to journalists that they don't anticipate anywhere near the spending next summer of what we've had this summer. So 200 million quid. They don't anticipate being anywhere near that. And any spend in January will come out of the summer spend next year. So you can predict a number, I can predict a number, but it could be as low as 80 million. I don't think it will go over much over 100 million next summer. So people talk about we need another centre-back. Yeah, we need a right-back. Yeah, we need a striker. Yeah, we need a goalkeeper, potentially. That's 4. Probably need another midfielder as well. That's 5. We're not buying 5 players next summer. We are probably already able to predict that this time next season, so at the start of next season, we'll probably, if we're lucky, buy 3 players, whether it's in January and the summer combined. I just don't see where the money will come from. Under the Glazers, everybody who's protesting or knows about this club will know that the Glazers don't have the money to go and invest another £200 million next summer, which is what's needed. Minimum. We need to keep doing it. So when you put it into context like that, you do end up with the scenario I mentioned at the start of the show. Do you, and I want to know your comments here, and we'll do a poll on this actually, do you, in the summer, do you buy a striker? When do you buy a striker? Do you buy a striker in January or do you wait till the summer? So let's do that. When do you buy a striker? January. I love these interactives. Or summer. So there you go. Hi Mark, you have a big following in India. Do you plan a trip here? I'd love to, Sahil. I'd love to come to India. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I will be coming there. Don't you worry. I think I'm doing America next summer, and then we'll have to look at when we do India. But yeah, you've got to plan it out. So, would you buy a player? Would you buy a striker in January, or would you buy a striker in the summer? Now, I'm going to give a bit of context. Don't start pushing your buttons too quickly. If we buy a striker in January, you are getting Gakpo, maybe Jonathan David, maybe Moussa Dembele. Probably not even an Ivan Toney or a Mitrovic. So you're going to get a player for about 40 million quid. And if you buy that player in January, you will not then be getting an Osimhen, a Leao, or whoever £100 million striker in the summer. So that's context for you. Would you, in January, go for Gakpo, or would you wait till the summer and get Osimhen? You will not get both with this board. They don't have the budget to go and spend 40 million on Gakpo in January and 100 million for Osimhen in the summer. They don't have that money to do that. So, I don't like it. You don't like it. But that's the way Manchester United is run. We have to consider what Murta and the club are putting out there, that there's not a lot of money to spend next summer and nowhere near what we spent last summer. So if you want a striker, do you go for Gakpo in the summer? In January, who's cheaper, or do you wait for the summer where there is a bigger market and go for somebody a little bit more expensive? And that's an interesting point, isn't it? And just on interesting points, remember we've had the story about Richard Arnold today. There was a bit of a leak and I forget where it came from, but apparently the club are very happy with John Murta, which doesn't surprise me. I keep saying this. Everyone keeps linking us to directors of football. Why are we going to get rid of John Murta? He's been at the club for years. He's good mates with Arnold. He's good mates with the Glazers. He ain't going anywhere. Why would I get rid of Murta? Because I don't think he's very good at his job. I think he paid nearly double what Anthony was worth right at the end of the window. He flew to Turin and made himself look foolish. He tried to get an Arnautovic, which was just absolutely naive. Spent all summer trying to get De Jong, flying to Barcelona. Overpaid on Martinez as well. I don't think he's a very good director of football at all. Didn't sell anybody, sold absolutely nobody. And I know Pereira went, but come on. Wan-Bissaka's still here. I don't think he's a good director of football. I understand the situation and that Ronaldo wants to leave, but you can't buy a better striker than Ronaldo in the short term, especially with his record last season, says Kian. So, 75% of you would buy a striker in January. Mark, we need to buy cheaper players, quantity of Eric Ten Hag players over 50 to 60 million quality players, says Ola. Well, now that we've done the poll, I can give you what I would do. And would I buy a striker in January or would I wait till the summer? I would buy a striker in January. And I think the previous comment has just nailed it. I don't actually think we should be spending £100 million on any player anymore. I think we need quantity as much as we need quality. And if we've got £120 million to spend and we're going to spend it all on a striker, we've misspent that money. If we've got £120 million to spend, we need to get 3 players for 40 million instead of getting 1 player for 120. Because if you scout well and you are clever, you can get 3 decent players for 40 million each. You can get a right back, you can get a striker, and you can get, maybe a centre back or whatever else you want. And it can be done because we got Eriksen for free. And Europe is littered over the last few years with people acquiring players with 1 year left on their contract, or free agents or clubs that need to sell. And I think that's what United need to do. I completely understand why some people would say let's wait till the summer. The January transfer window can be a little bit desperate. I think it will be different this year because of the World Cup potentially. But I don't think we can afford to write off seasons anymore. Last season, we ignored the January transfer window for the reason some people want us to ignore it now. We said we're waiting for the summer for a new manager to come in. And we did, and we didn't get top 4, and we nearly didn't even get Europa League football. We were very lucky to get European football at all. And people say, well, I'd rather not have it. We need the income. We do need the income of the Europa League. So we were very lucky last year when we ignored the January transfer window to get any European football. Are we going to do that again in January? We're Manchester United. We can't keep writing seasons off. So I think the sooner you give Ten Hag what he wants, the quicker things will happen. And I also think that Eric Ten Hag is a developmental manager. I don't think he needs £100 million strikers. I think if you give him a Cody Gakpo and he wants a Cody Gakpo, go and get him for 35 million. I think that, like the previous comment said there, we need to be buying players ASAP, and we need to be buying players for quantity as well as quality. And for me, that takes trust in the manager, and it takes good scouting. And Eric Ten Hag has got to be listened to. And Eric Ten Hag, as we think, likes Cody Gakpo. Now, there are other examples. Maybe he likes Jonathan David. Maybe he likes Moussa Dembele. I don't know. But my point is, they've got to back him on that. They've got to back him on that because it'll be cheaper, and he deserves that shout, because most of Ten Hag's signings so far, and it's very early, have been a rip-roaring success. Just one more piece of context. If Ronaldo leaves in January, sign a striker in January. If no, in the summer, that's where I'm at, says Rory. And I think, look, I don't really want to spend time talking about Ronaldo, Rory. Which striker would you go for in January, says Darren. But there is another context to this as well, about the priority being a right-back. We've got to consider that. I think you've got to consider, one, whether you would go for a striker in January or the summer. I would go in January if the right player's there, and I think it is, and it'll be cheaper to do that. But 2, if Ronaldo stays, do you go for a striker? You probably don't. You probably don't, actually. But should Ronaldo be staying after January? That's a big decision. First bake a cake, then put a cherry. Summer we can get better quality, spend on others in January, says Yash. And that I'm grateful for that, Yash, because there is a counter argument that you wait until the summer to get a striker because you can be more patient and you might be able to get a better player. Look, some of you might want Ivan Toney. We're not getting Ivan Toney in January. So if you want him, you've got to wait till the summer. And I think he's a great example of why you might wait till the summer. You can buy a player in January if they're available and you want them. This is what Ranić said. If the player's there, you've got to be ready to move. And if it's Cody Gakpo, we've got to be ready to move because I think he will go in January. But if you want Ivan Toney or you want Osman, January's out the window. You're waiting till the summer. So if you're one of those people saying, I want Osman or Ivan Toney and I want them in January, you're irrelevant. In the nicest way possible, you're irrelevant because we can't do that. You've got to have a player available in January to do that. And then the next thing, I suppose, is that as the story goes, what we're talking about is the priority is apparently a right back ahead of a striker. Now, do you agree with that? I think a right back's a necessity. And I understand why Ten Hag might want a right back ahead of a striker because, like somebody said there, you've still got Ronaldo, Martial, Rashford. They can all play up front. Elanga at a push. Sancho and Antony to cover the wings. If they, even Garnacho and Palestri at a push can cover the wings. So, yeah. But at right back, you've got Delo, you've got Brandon Williams, you've got Wan-Bissaka. Now, with all due respect to Wan-Bissaka and Williams, I just don't, I think Wan-Bissaka wants to go, and I think Ten Hag wants him to go. He's a stopgap until we can move him. He's not a long-term thing. And I think Brandon Williams has only ever really played at left-back and has never really set the world on fire since we first saw him break into the team. And then it just fell off a cliff, really. Even at Norwich, it wasn't great. So I don't really think he's the answer either. So, yeah, I think a right-back is a priority. Whether he'd put it ahead of a striker, I don't know. I mean, if you're saying to me, if I could get, I don't know, Dumfries or Frimpong in January, or I can get Gakpo, I know where I'm going to go. And I know we need a right back, but I know I'm going to go for Gakpo because I think, goals win games. But then I think, well, what happens to Delo between January and the summer? Brandon Williams or Aaron Wan-Bissaka? It's not the same. So I can sort of see that Ten Hag might be thinking, well, I do want a striker, but I'll wait till the summer. But I desperately need a right back to do Delo's job. I've got Malacia who can do Shaw's. To make top four, we need new recruits in January, says Gullum. And buy developmental players coming window, and once the club is stabilised, having star players will elevate it to the next level, says Neil. Yeah, and as ever, I appreciate the different opinions we're getting because I think it's really important. Jan says about Ethan Laird. I want to talk about him in a minute, but I think that. I think it's an interesting story because, look, there could be a different story tomorrow. We're not buying anyone in January. We're buying 2 people in January. There will be different stories, but it caught my attention and imagination because maybe right back is the priority in January and the striker waits till the summer. Maybe we get the striker in January and we get the right back in the summer. There's pros and cons. But I absolutely would agree that we're not getting any striker in January. There'll be a bigger market in the summer. That's the easiest assessment, is to say that in the summer there will be a bigger market of strikers. Osman will come into it, maybe Liao, maybe whoever else is doing really well. There'll be a lot of those players won't be available in January, but some will. And really it comes down to what Ten Hag wants. If Ten Hag wants Gakpo, you've got to go and do it in January. If he doesn't want Gakpo and he wants somebody else who's not available, he'll probably wait. And it's worth having that in your head. It would be nice to buy a striker in January, I agree. But if we don't get one, it might be for a different reason than we think. But I go back to what was said there. I definitely think I don't think we can leave January with nothing. I think we've got to do something. I'd like us to do 2 things, but we've got to do something, because I tell you for a fact, Chelsea will probably buy 2. I think Arsenal have got to buy in January because they're just a little bit thin like us. You never know what Spurs might do. You never know what Liverpool might do. They bought in January before. So I think buying in January is going to be very important. But it's not, it's like the traffic light system, isn't it? Not everything's red and not everything's green. There's amber in between. And I think it's... all I want is the club to back Ten Hag. And... we know he likes Gakpo. Was Gakpo an alternative to Anthony? That doesn't make sense. I was speaking to somebody about this about a month ago, and we were talking about Anthony and Gakpo. It's well known that United were talking to Gakpo, and it's well known that Gakpo knew United were interested, and it's well known that Ten Hag likes Gakpo. Now, what isn't well known is, are we still interested in him? Would we still like him? Or was he an alternative to Anthony? Now, the thing about him being an alternative to Anthony is that Gakpo is more like a Rashford. He's an inverted left winger. That's what he does. He has got a right foot, but he's not an invert. He can't invert. And what Ten Hag wanted off the right-hand side was a left footer, desperately. He wanted a left-footed winger. Well, Gakpo wouldn't have provided that. I personally think, and it's only a thought, it's only an opinion, sorry. I think that Ten Hag wanted both. And I think we ran out of money because we spent so much on Anthony. I think Ten Hag wanted both. And therefore, I think we should be going back for him in January. But only if Ten Hag wants him. And I think Ten Hag does. Kia says, then we move players and get both great clubs do. Okay, it makes total sense. But there is an interesting aspect there, I suppose, that will we sell players in January? Will we generate money? The dividends will be paid again. I know people don't want to hear this, but the dividends will be paid again in January in the summer. The dividends will be paid. Somewhere between 15 and 30 million will go out that club in dividends. They don't care what you think. They don't. They did it before we even bought a player in June, and they did it last January, and we didn't even buy a player. So the dividends are going to go out. So yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if any players go. Mark, different opinion. Do you think if we are top four, doing good in the league, Mbappe could come? He is looking to come to the Premier League. Josh, no. No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, never say never. This club is outlandish enough to do something ridiculous like that. And I'm not saying that signing Mbappe is a bad thing. Obviously, he's world class, but it's not what we need. I mean, the money you'd spend on Mbappe would be more than 200 million. So, no, I mean, that's just not going to happen. João Felix is not going to happen. I don't think we've got that sort of money. I always remember Richard Arnold saying in the pub interview he did in June that we're all right this summer, but next summer we're going to struggle. And Murta has said it as well 3 months later. The writing is on the wall. There's not a lot of money next summer. Now let rivals stick their nose in and go, oh, you'll find 200 million. But I think we all know there's not a lot of money. Even more reason to go and buy someone like a Gakpo for 35 million. You know, even more reason to be looking at players with 1 year left on their contract, free agents and stuff like that. I'd need to get clever in the transfer market. We're absolutely terrible at it. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. We could have got Anthony in June for about 50, 60 million and we spent 85. So, yeah, we could have got Martinez for about 35 million in June and we spent, 55. So we're terrible at negotiating, but we need to get a lot better and a lot quicker. The Awesome says, apart from buying a striker, definitely think we should buy a centre midfield pairing up with Casemiro and Bruno in the summer for the future. De Jong maybe, says the Awesome. Well, I saw ESPN today on about De Jong again. And these are the curveballs that don't make sense. We're talking there about the funds not really being there. And then we're hearing that we might still be interested in De Jong. I don't want to talk about De Jong. I've said what I've said about De Jong. I think we need to move on from De Jong. But what I would say is, and what do you think? I do think we need another midfielder. I do think we need another midfielder at Manchester United. I think we're wafer thin there. I think Eriksen and Casemiro have been a rip-roaring success. But I keep using the word rip-roaring. I never use that. Where am I getting that? I don't know where I'm getting that. But no, I think Casemiro and Eriksen have been a rip-roaring success. Done it again. I've done it again. They have been a success. I've got a weird feeling we're selling Sancho in the summer, says Yash. I mean, I'd be very surprised. Who would buy him? Who would buy Sancho? I don't think that will happen. I think Sancho's like Maguire. He's like Pogba to a certain extent. He's like many players. He's our problem to solve. No one's going to buy him. Do you know what wages Sancho's rumoured to be on as well? You'll cry. Someone in the chat, put it in there. The wages Sancho is rumoured to be on, he ain't going anywhere. We paid 74 million quid for him a year ago, and he's on something between 250 and 350 grand a week. He ain't going anywhere, mate. He's not going anywhere. But I wouldn't expect him to be going anywhere, to be honest, and hopefully he'll be a success. Yeah, I look at that midfield and I go Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno. Okay, you can do something with them. Donny, massive question mark. Hope he's going to work, but, I wouldn't even say it's 50-50 chance of working. I think it's probably not going to work. Hopefully it will. And then McTominay and Fred, who I value Fred and McTominay. I mean, Fred played very well last week and McTominay was playing well a month ago. But what's the contingency plan? Casemiro's 29, Eriksen's 30, Fred's 29. I think Casemiro might be older than 29 actually. McTominay is the youngest midfielder we've got, and Van de Beek. Are they good enough to be the next wave? I mean, short of one of these exciting young midfielders coming through like Mainu, or I like Gore if you've ever seen him, and there are others, Charlie Savage. If one of those could come through and be the next Scholes or Butts or something like that, we're laughing. But I think the midfield will need, and you've got to look at it like that. I look at it like that. I've seen this glimpse from Ten Hag and I'm very excited, but I think Ten Hag realistically is not going to get as challenging for things for at least 2 or 3 years. Well, in 2 or 3 years, some of our players in the first team will be approaching, decline, almost retirement. So what's the next wave? Who's going to come in and take Eriksen's spot? Who's going to come in and take Casemiro's spot? Who's going to come in and take Varane's spot? Maguire's 29. I think Lindelof's not far off. So we need to buy players now to fill things like right back, striker, goalkeeper, centre back, whatever. And over the next 3 years, we're going to need to replace players that are good now. So, yeah, I agree about the midfield. Ideally, this is why you want owners like Man City, Newcastle, Chelsea, where a manager just gets backed every summer with what they need. And as we know, I don't think the Glazers are that sort of owner, but we'll see. Would the dividends not be higher if the club is doing better winning trophies, says Kia? I don't know. And Danish says, hi Mark, it's my birthday today. Happy birthday to Danish. Yeah, happy birthday. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of that in the chat as well. So yeah, look, it's going to be very interesting. Be very interesting. I do actually think that the January transfer window will be interesting. I don't think we'll do nothing. I mean, look, we might not, but I think we've got to use it. I've always said that. We are a new club with Ten Hag, and we are trying to build. And when you're trying to build in football, time is not your friend. Managers have a shelf life, and you can't ignore transfer windows when you've got a new manager. So January is another transfer window. We've seen Bruno come in January. We've seen Diaz go to Liverpool in January. We've seen Spurs last year get Kulusevski and Bentancur. The January transfer window is not something to be ignored. And we can't afford to ignore it. I don't think we will. Desire says, if we get in it on a reasonable price, would you go for Rice? Rice is not going to come to Manchester United. I've always said this. Declan Rice wants to go to Chelsea and Chelsea want Declan Rice. That will happen when West Ham lower their ridiculous value on Rice. There may have been a chance that United wanted him under Solskjaer. I don't think he's a player that Ten Hag wants, and I don't think he's a player that United would go for. I would forget about Rice. I'd forget about Bellingham as well. We should look at Tielemans instead of Frenkie, says Mid. Well, Tielemans is a weird one, isn't he? Because he is available for next to nothing in January. Now, I'm not saying we get Tielemans, but he's a prime example of the deals we should be doing. If Tielemans was a player that you liked, or more importantly, Tielemans was a player that Ten Hag liked, you get him for like 15 million in January. Because Leicester have to take something for him. Now, Leicester might say we're not taking anything, we need him to try and stay up, but he's going to go for nothing in the summer. So you get him for 15 million in January, or you get him for nothing in the summer. Either way, that's a freebie. It's a free hit. It's like Eriksen. You've got to do those deals. You've got to be looking at those deals. Because United would normally spend 90 million on a player like that. I'm not saying we get Tielemans. What I'm saying is those sort of deals exist. There will be, I don't know them all, but there will be players who are out of contract. I'll type it in now. Players out of contract in 2023. So I've got a website here, and I can tell you who's out of contract in 2023. And we'll go through some of them, and you can say whether you would like any of them. So Skriniar is out of contract in the summer. Tielemans, obviously. Chelsea's Jorginho and Kante. We probably wouldn't want them. Wilfried Zaha, Thomas Lemar, Asensio, Firmino, Ndika, the centre-back at Frankfurt. He's pretty good. Thomas Lemar, attacking midfielder at Atletico Madrid. Trossard at Brighton is out of contract. Memphis Depay, as we know. Cruz. And you know what as well you should be looking at? You know what else you should be looking at? There's a few there. Forget that for a minute. Forget that. What about in the summer of 2024 with 18 months left on their contract? What about the players with 18 months left on their contract? Because they're still cheap, because if they're not going to sign a contract, it's one of the last opportunities for people to get rid of them. Declan Rice, he's one of those. 2024, his contract's up. Saka, Leao at Milan, he's only got 18 months left on his contract. Bastoni, Milinkovic-Savic, Pau Torres, James Maddison, Ndidi, Verratti, Soucek, Pulisic, Kovacic, Olmo, Kimpembe, Ruben Neves. You know, there's bloody loads. There's loads. And United, I almost feel like John Murta, if he was watching, would be going, what, if only he could show us what website he's on. Did you write them down? Don't worry, we can watch it back later. Like, there are players, good players, with 6 months and 18 months left on their contracts. You're not paying 100 million quid for them. People are talking about Leao being available for £100 million in the summer. He's only got 1 year left on his deal in the summer. So you've got to... This is what I need United to do. This is what Ten Hag needs United to do. Switch on. But the problem we've got is we've got people who get on a plane to Turin and come back with nothing, go to Barcelona and come back with nothing, spend £30 million more on a player than they should do. Do you trust those people to be on the ball in relation to players that are coming out of contracts, got 18 months left on the contracts, you know, getting deals done? They can be done. We need to do it. That's what we need to do. Anyway, good. I really enjoyed that section. Maybe we'll come back to it in a minute. But I want to talk to you about Loan Watch because it sort of fits in with transfers. So I've got a selection of players here and I wanted to sort of let you know what they're doing on loan. Why are we mentioning these players when Ten Hag will go shopping in Holland, says Charlie Max? Well, he might do, he might not. So look, I want to start off with Eric Bailly. Now, Eric Bailly is a player that is well liked, but is probably going to end up coming back to Manchester United and not going to Marseille. He's injured tonight. I think they were playing tonight or tomorrow night. And it's his second injury in his time with Marseille, and they've both been thigh injuries. So I think there is a concern out of Marseille that Eric Bailly has played well, but has got injury problems. Now, if Eric Bailly doesn't move to Marseille in the summer and comes back to Manchester United, he's still got a long contract at Manchester United. So, you know, these are problems that are not going away. I call them being swept under the carpet. We did it with Andres Pereira for years, who, can I just say, Andres Pereira is doing very well at Fulham. But there are players that we haven't sold that are still at this club, and we never seem to get rid of them. And Eric Bailly is one of those players that could well be coming back and still be a player that we've got to pay for future years. So Eric Bailly at Marseille is doing quite well, but unfortunately, again, he's had a couple of injuries with his thigh. So, you know, I have a feeling we're going to spend something silly like 70 million on Harry Kane, another one whose contract is up in 2024. I mean, you know, Joshua Bowwater, you might not be wrong. Harry Kane has only got 18 months left on his contract, but he's 29. He's 29. Marseille obliged to buy Bailly. I don't think they are, Sugan. You're right to a certain extent, but there's something about his contract that he doesn't have to be bought. And I can't remember what it was. I don't know whether it was number of games played or something like that. And I'm just saying it could be an issue. Maybe someone in the chat knows that. There was a condition for Marseille. Another player you might have forgotten about is Alex Telles. He's played 10 games in La Liga. I think he's at Sevilla, and 4 games in Europe. So for Alex Telles, he's steadily playing quite a lot. So it's looking good for Telles that he probably will end up moving next summer. So Telles is doing quite well. And obviously we don't want Telles back. We've got Malacia and Shaw. So we should be able to move him on. Yeah, they are obliged to buy him if they qualify for the Champions League, says Sugan. Okay, that's interesting. So Telles is doing quite well. And then we move to the Championship, where we've got 4 players that I want to talk about. Hannibal Mejri at Birmingham. We've got Alvaro Fernandez at Preston. Ethan Laird at QPR. And one more, Ahmad at Sunderland. So how are they doing? All a bit younger players, but Maybury, I spoke to Troy Deeney. I was on the Football Fill-In a couple of weeks ago with Ben Foster, and Troy Deeney was on, and we were sat talking off air. And obviously Troy Deeney's at Birmingham now, and so's Mejbri, and he gave, you know, probably the best sort of feedback you can get on a player, really, because you can watch them all you like, but getting first-hand information from Troy about it. And he said, look, you know, he's got a lot to learn, but he's at the right place. He's got the right attitude. He's got a bit of a fire about him. It's just about developing in the Championship this season. So I think Mejbri's played made 10 appearances, about 450 minutes. So what's that? 40. He's averaging about 45 minutes per game. But that's because in some games he's started and played all the game, and in some of them he's come on for 10 minutes. So steady for Mejbri. And I think from what Troy Deeney said to me, he is gradually getting better and better. So it's just about playing games and getting better. So Mejbri's a player that we hope can develop, and it's a big year for him. Ahmad at Sunderland, the manager's been a little bit, like he wants more from him. Obviously, Ahmad is at Sunderland. He's made 9 appearances with 320 minutes. So a little bit less game time, but the same sort of thing going on. Hopefully he can kick on over the next few weeks and into the second half of the season. I think basically what Sunderland want from him is what Rangers wanted from him. Very, very technical player, very, very talented player, but they want him to start being a little bit more direct, scoring more goals, creating more goals. And I think that's the challenge for Ahmad. And then we've got 2 players who are doing fantastically well. You've got Alvaro Fernandez, who's at Preston, who I think he's played 13 games with over 800 minutes. So he's playing a lot of first-team football from the start. Preston are mid-table in the Championship, doing really, really well there. Really promising what Alvaro Fernandez did last season at Manchester United. He was knocking on the door as a young lad with Rangnick. He's now gone to the Championship and he's playing regularly for Preston, which is exactly what you want. And I'm a massive fan of our younger players going to the Championship. I think it's the best. I would rather they went to the Championship than, the Dutch League or La Liga. I think it's the right place to be, because the move from the Championship is the most logical place to put young players. If Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth get promoted and Fulham, where do they go? From the Championship into the Premier League. So dropping our youth players into the Championship and seeing if they can swim is exactly the place to be. So really good about Alvaro Fernandez. And then Ethan Laird at QPR, they're top of the Championship at the moment. He's played 12 games and he's had over 1,000 minutes. So he's starting games and he's playing a lot. So Ethan Laird is doing fantastically well at QPR, right back. And Alvaro Fernandez is a left back, doing fantastically well at Preston. So look, at the moment, I remember I don't talk about the loans every month because I think you've got to let them go and you've got to leave it a few weeks and see what's going on. I don't think weekly analysis is really worth it. But I remember us doing this in previous years. I remember we've spoken about, Palestri and Chong and Ahmad, and they've really not done anything. So look, there's encouragement on the pitch and then there's encouragement off the pitch. And look, Tellez and Bay are players that we're looking to sell. Mejbri, Ahmad, Alvaro Fernandez and Laird, none of them could end up playing for Manchester United, but ultimately they're all in the Championship and they're all doing pretty well. Some of them better than others, but they're all doing pretty well. So I'm interested and excited to see how that's going to develop over the next coming weeks and months because, look, we saw Ethan Laird in pre-season, didn't we? And I thought he had a bad first half in one of the games and then the second half he was a lot better. I think it was one of the games where we played over the weekend, wasn't it? Was it Vallecano maybe? I can't remember. But doing very well at QPR. And look, at the very least, if they don't work out, you sell them. You sell them for 5 million or 10 million and you make a bit of money. So it's good. It's positive. And as I was talking about this morning about the youth, Garnacho, Savage, Iqbal, Palestri, do they all need to be sat on the bench training with the first team? Maybe a couple of those could go out on loan in January as well. Before we spend on the squad, we should spend on a quality sporting director. Paul Mitchell immediately springs to mind, says Charlie. Well, look, Charlie, going back to what we were talking about there, about contracts that are running out in 2023 and 2024. If I was sporting director, I'd be having this chat with Eric Ten Hag. I'd be saying, what do you think about Yuri Tillemans? What do you think about Leao? What do you think about Lafont? These are all players in positions that we can strengthen in, and they're all out of contract in the next 6 to 18 months. We can start having those conversations with them. The better you play on the pitch and the more attractive Man United are, the easier the job is for us. But you've got to have a sporting director who knows what they're doing, and I just don't think we do. I really don't think we have a CEO, a sporting director that know what they're doing, and Ten Hag's going to have to mould them into what he wants, because I think Christian Eriksen's the spot. Christian Eriksen, for me, is what Man United need to focus on. He was a free transfer, and he's been better than... Well, look, I wouldn't say he's been better, but Christian Eriksen, free. Anthony, 100 million. Casemiro, 60 million. Martinez 50 million, and Malacia 12 million. Eriksen free. Is Eriksen up there with Anthony, Casemiro and Martinez? Yes. And we got him for free. These deals are what Manchester United need to be looking at. These deals are what Manchester United need to be preparing for. And I'm telling you now, I've seen Bayern Munich do it. I've seen Juventus do it. I've seen Barcelona do it. You can almost you can buy really good players for next to nothing, but you've got to be proactive and you've got to be attractive. And that's why Man United, for me, need a better sporting director. And look, you know what? Edwin van der Sar, as I'm going to say something controversial here. Edwin van der Sar, as our director of football, isn't the best choice. He's not. There are better director of footballs out there than Edwin van der Sar for Manchester United, and I don't even know their names. I know some names. You know, people mention people like Mitchell and Edwards, and there are others. But there'll be directors of football and sporting directors out there that we don't even know their name, but they're better than Edwin van der Sar. And do you want to know why? Because they'll have experience of recruiting with bigger clubs and bigger budgets. Edwin van der Sar's recruitment for Ajax his experience is not the same as Manchester United. So I'm not saying Edwin van der Sar would be bad for Manchester United, but we need somebody who knows the European scene, who has good relationships in the European scene with players and clubs. And that's something that Man United don't have. Our reputation in transfers is shocking. We're seen as a soft touch. We're seen as a circus act. We need someone to come in and rebuild our reputation. And nobody talks about this enough. I spoke about this 4 years ago. You speak to any Man United journalist, you speak to any journalist. It's well known in the industry that Manchester United's transfer activities are laughed at by agents, players and clubs. Even now. We need somebody come in who can get our reputation back, because when you're being laughed at by it's one thing being laughed at by clubs because you're competing with clubs, but you've also got to deal with clubs like Ajax when you want to buy one of their players. So you don't want to be laughed at by clubs because you might have to deal with clubs and you have to compete with clubs, and you don't want to be laughed at by agents who you're trying to persuade their clients to come to you. So we need professionalism behind the scenes if we want to go and compete for people like a Tillemans or a Leao or anybody else's contract that's coming up in 18 months' time. Because it's not like it's a free hit. It's not a pond that no one else is fishing in. Bayern Munich have done this for years. Juventus have done it for years. Barcelona do it. Liverpool will do it. There are bargains to be had with people who've got 18 months left on their contract, but you've got to know what you're doing, and United need to start fishing in that pond. We're not great at it. Eriksen was very, very good, but who else went for Eriksen? We were quite lucky with that. We were competing with Brentford. That was it. There was no Chelsea, Spurs, or anybody else. So we need to be able to compete, and we need to be better. Bring back Rangnick. Don't get me started on Rangnick. I don't even care what Rangnick did as the coach, because that's not why I got excited. I was excited because Rangnick was going to be our sporting director. And we ended up with John Murtough. Yeah, we need someone like that. We do need someone like that. But I don't think Manchester United are going to do it. As I said, today there was a story leaking out that they're very happy with John Murtough. And they'll be you know why they'll be very happy with John Murtough? Because the Glazers love people that have been there for years, that keep everything in-house. They don't want specialism, professionalism, or answering back. So, yeah, I don't think we'll get a director of football, if I'm honest. Bring back Ralph, says Sally. Ralph will never come back, unfortunately. Anyway, look, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I've really enjoyed the show tonight. Even if the younger players do well on the loan, the club will sell them for less than they're worth. Oh, Glenn, don't get... You know what? James Garner. How did we move on from that? How did we move on from James Garner? I mean, it's still disgusting. And we're talking about Murtough and Arnold and our recruitment in the summer, and they all they do is usher you towards Martinez and Eriksen and Anthony and Casemiro and go, look at the great business we did. But no, you didn't do great business. You overpaid on every one of those. They're obvious signings and you overpaid on them. You don't take the credit. Ten Hag takes the credit. You don't. You overpaid. But let's pull our view back to here. Who did you sell? Who did you sell in the summer? You didn't sell anybody you needed to sell. and you sold James Garner. I look at that midfield and I think James Garner would do a better job than some of the midfielders that we've got, and he should have been given an opportunity and he wasn't. It's sad. It really is sad. But I think we're stuck with what we've got until the Glazers go. If the Glazers sell the club, Murtaugh's out of a job, Arnold's out of a job, and they know it. But while we've got the Glazers, I don't think they'll change it, to be fair. Don't forget to check out Boohoo Man Active. You can get your hoodies, your shorts, your tracksuits, your active wear for the gym. 40% off. Scan the QR code next to me or go through the link in the description. Well worth a look. 40% off with the code Goldbridge. Thanks everyone for watching. We're back tomorrow. We've got Ten Hag's press conference to react to and lots of other stuff as well. I'll speak to you in a bit. Thanks for watching.